A few years ago, I read this article in a business magazine called Fast Company. It was called Generation Flux. And what it talked about is how the business and labor environment has changed over the past few years. And of course, sociologists and anthropologists and all kinds of different scientists have decided to label the last few decades as, uh, Generation X, Generation Z, and so forth and so forth, and the millennials and the baby boomers. So, Generation Flux, basically, according to the article, says it's a mindset that embraces instability, that tolerates and even enjoys recalibrating careers, business models, and assumptions. Few traditional career tactics train us for an era where the most important skill is the ability to acquire new skills. And so the article goes on to talk about how, by giving examples of different people, how, for example, when I was growing up, and mind you, I'm not that old, but when I was growing up, and perhaps the generation before mine, this was the value system. Okay? You go to college, you pick a career, you get out of college, you get a job with a great company, and you stay with that company for the rest of your working years until you retire and get your pension or your social security. That was the model back then. In those days, a person that you saw as working, worked 1 year in this place, and then they jumped and worked in this other place, and then they moved to another city and did jobs here and there, doing this, doing that. No, in my days, that would have been considered an unstable person, somebody who kind of like, they don't know what they want with their lives. But in this article, they go through different stories of different people who have actually transitioned from one career to another in a short span of time. Let me read a little bit about one of them, Reina Kumra. She says, I am skill hoarding. Every time I update my resume, I see the path that I didn't know would be. You keep throwing things into your backpack, and eventually you'll have everything in your toolkit. So it talks about how she is, when they interviewed her, she was on a panel about the future of mobile before a group of top chief information officers. She's not technically in the mobile business, nor is she a software engineer or an academic. She actually works for a federal agency, the Broadcasting Board of Governors, doing innovation that oversees Voice of America and other government run media. Conrad started out in film school. She made two documentaries, including one in South America and one in India, and then she took a job as video editor for Scientific American Frontiers. She says, after each trip, I would come back and find that the editing tools had all changed. So she decided to learn computer programming. I figured I had to get my tech on. So she went and signed up for an interactive telecommunications program at New York University. She then moved into the ad world, doing digital campaigns at different companies before launching her own agency. Along the way, she picked up a degree from Harvard Design School. She taught at the University of Amsterdam, and she started a non-for-profit. She says, so many people tell me, I don't know what you do. It's an admission echoed by many in Generation Flux, but it doesn't bother them at all. She says, I am a collection of many things. I'm not one thing. So in this view, what happens is a person is not valued for their ability to stick to one skill set and stay with a job or career for all of their working life. The value now is to pick up a portfolio of multiple skills And in the eyes of employers of the future or clients of the future, what is going to be valuable is not how long you've been working with this company or how long have you been working on this career, but actually, how many skills do you have? How many things can you do? How easily can you transition from one skill set to another one, from one employment to another one, from one type of business to another one? And I kind of like read this article and sort of, put it on the side and had forgotten about it until a few years ago when at one of our faculty development days at Long Beach City College, we had a speech by a guest speaker and he brought up the following. Let me share that with you. In 2018, our school had its traditional Flex Day. It's called a faculty, essentially, development day. And we invited Dr. Terrell Strayhorn to do the main speech and also a couple of classes about keys to educational success. One of the things that he said really struck a chord with me. And he said the following: 40 million Americans work in jobs that didn't exist 4 years ago. Now, this was in 2018, but it got me to thinking how many things have come up that didn't exist a long time ago. Drive sharing companies like Uber and Lyft, delivery systems like DoorDash and Postmates, new ways of housing like Airbnb. And it got me to thinking. Again, echoing Dr. Strayhorn's quote here, 40 million Americans work in jobs that didn't exist 4 years ago. Man, and then I started thinking, like I was saying, things like Uber, things like all these apps that we use nowadays to keep track of everything from our shopping to our finances to our personal health. This is amazing. The world is evolving very rapidly. And so it seems to me like I agree with what the article said. What is valuable is not, you get a career and you stick to it and stay with it for the rest of your life. What it seems to be valuable is the ability to adapt and acquire new skills, learn new things, and be able to jump from one thing to another one. And you know what's funny? That's my life. That is my life. I started out as a biochemist, working in research. Of course, my goal was to eventually obtain a position in a university, in an academic research program, get grants, publish articles. At around the time that I was transitioning out of through my PhD program, a new type of company emerged. All of these gene editing companies like Genentech and things like that. That was kind of new. This was the private sector. Later on, I left my career in science and I became a minister. I had to acquire a new skill set. I had to learn about a lot of things, especially about interactions with other people. I traveled to other countries, lived in other places, so I had to learn about cultural adaptation and stuff. At some point, our organization grew to the point where we needed to build an infrastructure, administrative, legal, financial. And guess who got to be there? This guy. I had to learn about nonprofit management, finances, legal issues, excuse me, and become, something different. Later on, our organization decided to branch out in their publications into different languages. And so we needed to build a publications branch for our Spanish speaking people in Latin America. I was in charge of that. I had to learn about the publications industry, about copyrights, about editing, stuff like that. Later on, when the economy kind of went down and I needed some extra income, a friend of mine offered me to join him in a venture to build an investment fund. So I had to learn about investments, accounting, all this kind of stuff. And then in the process, I had kind of like figured, I need something a little more stable. And I started teaching. I had to basically relearn a lot of the stuff in science that I had forgotten because I had left it behind, years before. And I became a teacher. And then as I speak right now, we have just undergone the year 2020, a huge transformation in our society because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I've had to learn how to become an online instructor. I had to get a certification. I've had to learn how to use all these different tools. I'm even having to learn how to produce videos like I'm doing right now. All of those things are valuable. It may be that in the old days, a person like myself or a person like the people highlighted in this article would have been labeled as unstable, as directionless, don't know what they want, not sure where they want to go. But in the new world, that multiplicity of skills, that portfolio of multiple experiences, that ability to transition from one thing to another, you know what? It is valuable. And if at the moment that Dr. Strayhorn made his quote that 40 million Americans work in jobs that didn't exist 4 years before, I asked the question, are you now in a position where in 4 years you might be working in an industry or a job that doesn't exist yet? And it seems to me like it is part of the task of us as educators to prepare you for that, to give you not knowledge, not facts, but skills and the ability to acquire new skills. So I hope you enjoy this and that you could discuss among yourselves some ideas, some responses to this philosophy appetizer.